Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm not sure where you're listening today because we are not live. We are actually live to tape, and I am here at the Kanawha Library, the Kanawha County Library. This is the first time we've been doing this. I've got an awesome guest with me today, and we are just going to dive right in here. I want to thank you for joining me. In case I forgot to mention, this is Joe Justice, and you are listening to the Kanawha Valley Hustlers. I want to thank you for watching, and I want to remind you that next week, September 19th, I have my marketing presentation on marketing secrets for savvy spins. That is going to be with Up Next Charlie West. And I want to remind you, you do not have to be a member for Up Next Charlie West to join that. You can join that. Anybody can join that, so you can feel free to sign up. I will put the link in the descriptions and the comments. Some way for you to join. It's going to be a great presentation, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. Let me set my timer here before we get started, so we don't go too long. I don't want to take too much of this man's time because I know he's very busy and he's got a lot of stuff going on. So I want to go ahead and introduce everybody here to Max Knapp. Max is the owner of Black Bear Capital, and I would describe him best as a serial entrepreneur, but I'm going to let him go ahead and describe himself. So Max, tell me, buddy, what's your hustle?
Sure. Yeah. So I co-own with a partner Black Bear Capital, which is a wealth management firm based here in West Virginia. Outside of that, I have interests in private businesses, private investments, own some real estate, own a couple other operating entities here in West Virginia, an HVAC company, a plumbing company, have invested in a few others. And so again, here in West Virginia, I think it's prime opportunity for young, ambitious professionals to really succeed through entrepreneurship. I mean, especially around private businesses, there's a lot of legacy-based companies across our state that really lack succession planning. So startups are not the only way to find your way into entrepreneurship, but also through acquisition.
Now, what you just said there was really interesting, because I know when a lot of people, myself included, when I think of entrepreneurship, I think of startups. I think, and everybody's mind just kind of goes to Silicon Valley and that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of other ways to get into business, to run business, and to be an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it's certainly a buzzword, startup, and they're right when they say a lot of America's growth is going to be through startups, but you have to still consider retaining the businesses that are there, right? And so from an entrepreneurial standpoint, when you come in and buy a business that has been around for 30 years, your risk is also much lower, right, than trying to start up your own entity. And it's still entrepreneurship. In a lot of these companies, there's a lot of things that need changed. And so, again, I think startups kind of get a lot of the publicity, but acquisition is certainly a really feasible way to dip your foot into entrepreneurship. So
just kind of walk me through, how does that work if there's somebody, he's got let's say a plumbing business, he's getting up there in years, his kids have moved out of state, or not interested in picking up the family business or whatever. How would you go about acquiring that? What goes into something like that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times what you find is that the owners of these businesses, oftentimes in their 60s, they don't really know what that next step looks like. And they'll try to get advice from, say, their accountant or their attorney. A lot of times maybe they'll try to hire a business broker to sell their business. A lot of times they don't even know to do that. And so what happens to a plumbing business that has 6-7 employees? Well, a lot of times they just shut the doors. The employees go find work elsewhere. The issue with that is these plumbing companies, these HVAC companies, a lot of the trade companies across our state, is these owners have done very, very well, and these businesses do very, very well. It's certainly not a glorified profession by any stretch, but again, it's much needed. It's going to be around for a long time.
I feel like that's starting to change a little bit too. It seems like the wait times for plumbers and the wait times for HVAC folks are starting to increase more and more. It's like 6 months out before I can get a plumber. All of a sudden, like, being a plumber is not necessarily such a bad gig. Right?
Well, exactly, and that's what I'm saying. They're not a sexy business, but they do very, very well financially. And so what you've seen from a demographic standpoint is a lot of people in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, they went into that trade. And now my generation and younger kind of stray away or push that in terms of what I want to do. And so now you're seeing a lack of it. And what I think West Virginia is starting to do with their community and technical colleges is push that a little bit little bit further, which is great. I mean, again, our population works out well to kind of push people into the trades.
And so tell me a little bit about like Black Bear Capital. So do you manage businesses as like a portfolio, or how exactly do you operate?
Yeah, so Black Bear Capital is a wealth management firm, and so we're typically helping people with saving for retirement, et cetera. You know, we have clients that are 25 years old, and we have clients that are, you know, well into retirement. And so the goals for each person is, of course, going to be different in terms of growing their wealth or preserving it for the rest of their life. We also work with institutions to help manage 401k plans, et cetera. My other interests are in private businesses. That is technically outside of Black Bear. It is a separate entity, but Black Bear itself is really helping manage wealth. Yeah.
Okay. So now, do you these other businesses? I think you said you own some real estate. You've got HVAC and some other types of businesses. Do you have like a portfolio of businesses? Is that kind of how you operate as a serial entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I mean, it can get pretty ambiguous as you start to acquire assets, and so we're starting to structure that a little bit. I'm in the process. I've raised what's called a private equity fund, and so that kind of that adds a little bit of administration to the process in terms of being able to do it from an entity, and that's called Whitewater Capital Partners. But yeah, the HVAC, the plumbing, the real estate, they're all technically separate businesses, and so there's a lot of administrative burden there.
So tell me, I'm really curious. You've got a diverse set of businesses there. What type of industry do you like working? Do you enjoy working in the most?
Well, my entire professional career has been in finance, and so I've been accustomed to sitting behind a desk and staring at a computer, and I like to remain active. So like, for instance, with the plumbing business, there's been several days where I've drove up just to help assist them on jobs. And you know, don't get me wrong, it's not something that I aspire to do 40 hours a week, but when I'm doing it, it's hard work. You feel very satisfied and gratified when you're done with the job, and it really gives you an appreciation for all of those people out there that are doing work that is just it's difficult. It's labor intensive, and it's very important. And so I like to so-called get my hands dirty on occasion just to gain that appreciation.
Yeah, my family comes from construction background and stuff, and that is the one thing that's different. You know, for me in the computer world, it's like I don't really have anything to show for it at the end of the day. But if you're digging ditches, at least at the end of the day, you got a ditch, right?
That's right. Yeah, you can see the fruits of your labor and everything that you put into it. And it's just like I said, it's very, very satisfying at the end of the job.
So tell me a little bit about personal motivation. What do you do because running several businesses, that's not the kind of thing, like, I know that the fantasy idea is you just have a portfolio and you stand, you know, kind of overhead and just scraping all the money, but that's not how it works in real life, right? Tell me a little bit about how do you stay on task? What kind of tools do you use to make sure that you're getting your actual work done, not procrastinating and following through?
Yeah, it's never going to be as passive as you think it is, even with real estate, getting just random calls about maintenance issues. Of course, you try to automate as much as you can, and that's utilizing not only softwares and technologies, but other outside vendors and professionals like accountants and bookkeepers and property managers, et cetera. And I think that's important. You know, for me, entrepreneurship and what's so attractive about it, first and foremost, is the freedom. You know, I control my life, I control my workflow. Not that I enjoy every minute of my work life, but again, that's kind of what creates my schedule is what's happening in my life. And you know, I started my career working for some larger institutions, even here in West Virginia, and I said, look, if I'm going to be doing this for another 30 years, I would much rather do it for myself, even if there's going to be some hard work along the way. So I live a life where again, I somewhat get to choose my schedule, and with a lot of these businesses, it's just finding the automation, and you know it very well, all the way from marketing to accounting, being able to find the proper tools and software and people that can help is key.
Yeah, it's really key. And those individuals, man, I tell people, if you find an employee that can show up on time and that can actually go through and follow through on the job and, tick off those steps, hold on to them with both hands, because that can be hard to find sometimes.
Well, that's a whole other issue when you get talking about the labor market. But you're right. It's impossible to incentivize someone outside of yourself to do the job as well as you can, right? And that's
I would go as far as to say that you can't.
You can't. I agree.
A lot of people like to just imagine that everybody's just as passionate about their passion project as they are, and it's like nobody's going to care as much as you.
I don't think you'll get much more than 80% out of an employee,
and that's okay.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Agreed.
That's why they're getting a salary, and that's why they're not the boss. Right.
Yeah, exactly. You have to understand that, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up here, I really appreciate the conversation. It's been really great, but I want to know, for people that are just getting started, maybe they're young and maybe not, maybe they're a little bit older, maybe they're looking at, maybe their bosses looking to retire and they want to take over the business. What kind of steps would you recommend for people that maybe want to get into entrepreneurship, start a business, buy a business? What kind of general ideas could you give somebody?
Sure. Well, I will start off by saying that you're never going to feel comfortable stepping into it. There's always going to be questions you don't know the answer to. First and foremost, I think the younger you are, having some experience helps. Not that you can't be a 22-year-old entrepreneur, because you absolutely can. But if you're going into a field like, say, financial advisory like I do, it would certainly help to have some experience under your belt so you can kind of step into that role. But really, it just, the key to entrepreneurship in my eyes is one, having grit, and two, being resourceful. How resourceful can you be to find the answers to questions that you don't know the answer to, right? And so that's a key.
And along those same lines, I'll just I don't want to put words in your mouth, but everything changes all the time. So just because you might have read a book about the way somebody did it in the past, you might be able to get ideas from them, but the market could have changed, or institutions could have changed, or things. So you have to be adaptive, right?
You have to adapt. And what I would say about education is great, but you're never going to learn like you do on the job. And entrepreneurship is one where you learn, you get a very well-rounded education on the job. So I could leave it there, but you're right. You have to adapt or you die.
Great. Max, we'll leave it with there. I don't think we could top that. Thank you so much for joining today. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did enjoy this, make sure to like, subscribe, share, do all the things, get us out there, and make sure you drop Max a comment, let him know how much you enjoyed this conversation. Until next time, bye for now.